Hello and welcome to Affinity. Here we've got a sunburst because it's the sun, or starburst because it forms a star. It's a picture here from a church in Lisbon, in Carmo. And what can we do about it? Well, there's a little bit of lightness up here. If I click those three there to show where it's gone too dark and too light, then up here it shows this is going a bit too much because it's fallen off the histogram over there. So I want to pull this back. If I use the exposure, I drag the whole thing, so I'm making the darks darker. I'm squeezing this end up here as well. So let's double click that to put it back to as it was. And we'll go down to shadows and highlights. And now if I move this, it just squeezes the top end more. So I can just bring that down until that red and yellow area disappears. Then I'm going to see if I can bring up the shadows a bit, because again, if I move this, you can see on the histogram up there, just the bottom end is moving. So I'll bring this up here, and if you go too far it goes a little bit bloomy, so just go up to somewhere where I can do some further work in the photo persona on it. And whilst we're here, let's just cover up that spot. So I'll go to the blemish removal tool, right square bracket to increase that, and just click on there and drag to somewhere that'll cover it up quite nicely, and then develop. Okay, Control 0 to get back out again. And where should we start? Let's have a look at the bokeh here. And this is what you are going to get with this kind of picture. And you either include them or you try and get rid of them. And let's look at what we can do with that. So this one here, the background here isn't too bad, but if I go to the one down here, it's, look, this is in front of people, and you could clone some people from over here to down here, and there's a person here. It's starting to get very messy. That one we're not going to do much with. This one here, no, that's just a bit more colour. And if you clone up here, you're going to get into problems. Look at this sun line down here. It's a different angle to this line down here. So let's just do something to turn those down. So I'll just zoom in so I can see all of them, and what I'll do here is you just use an HSL and a mask. So adjustments here, we'll use several HSLs I think. So here I'm just going to turn down the saturation on the whole picture, so those things are disappearing. You can actually do different HSL layers if each one is different, but we'll just for now just use one. Just makes those less obvious there. And then use the built-in mask. I'm going to invert that layer, so layer invert, or just Control I, so that it's all completely masked. And I need to paint it back, so I go to the paintbrush tool here and white to include that effect. Get the brush here, what opacity have I got on that? So hardness very soft, opacity yeah, around about 30% probably will do, just by experimenting, so I can paint it a bit at a time. Make the brush a bit smaller just to knock down that effect. There's a bit there, brush a bit smaller to make that, and just paint over that till that effect is reduced. And a bit smaller again, and paint on here just to turn that down a little bit so they just don't intrude quite so much, but they're our natural effects. And some people like them and some people don't. So if you don't, you could have a long time cloning that. So there we go. Now then, there's actually a bit of white bloom around this. We could keep it. We could try and remove it. You could play with things like clarity and so on. But what I think we'll do with that is we'll just do a haze removal. And because this is a kind of hazy area, we're going to actually do a new layer. So if I go to Layer, Merge Visible, so this just takes a photograph effectively of what is there in the first place. And then on that, see here it's not showing up yet, but it'll turn up with the picture. There it is. And I go Filters, Haze Removal, and this is something else that will take time, so you just have to wait for it to finish. Okay, so now we're not worrying about everything else because we're going to mask it. And we just look for play with these, so this strength effect and maybe the exposure. a little bit here, what's going to get the both best balance. So we're just making the background there a little bit darker, because we're going to paint it back a bit at a time, so don't worry if it's overdone, but look at the contrast between the lines and the background itself. So just play around with those. Okay, that'll do. So we'll apply that, and again we need to mask that out because there's a pixel layer. We could use a mask down here. So I have to mask an empty mask, which effectively is a black mask, which then removes all that effect, and we'll just paint back in again. So we'll go to the brush again on white and go down into here and just kind of paint around here. Just look at the effect it's having there. It's got a bit funny at the edges because look, there's wet edges. That gives a more smooth effect. Yeah, we don't need that wet edges effect on that brush. So look for the brush. What's the effect you're having? With this, you're probably going to need a lower opacity because you just want to do a bit at a time. And there we just paint around that area there, and it just gets rid of that blooming effect just a bit. We don't want to make it overdo it. So if you don't turn that off and back on, if it looks like you've overdone it, we can switch to black to turn it, you know, put back the effect that's there. There we go, it's a little bit better. So you haven't quite got that effect you had before of that big bloom. Just turn that down a bit. That's okay. Right, so let's do something else now. So we'll go to another HSL on top of here, and we'll just pick one of these colours here. So I've got a selector, so click on the picker, and I'll pick on the column there. It gives that colour, and if I turn it up and down, you can see the effect it's having. You can also see other areas where I don't particularly want it. I just want to get these on the columns here. It doesn't matter that it's all there, but it's the main areas around here which are the more yellowish. So what I can do with that is actually go to the paintbrush again, go to the black one and turn this one up. I think if I can turn it up full, because I want to say I don't want these effects to happen in here, in these odd places. I just really want it on the pillars and those areas there, and those will be fine because those are pillarish ones. So now what I'm going to do here is just turn up the saturation a bit here, but it's gone a bit orange. So to counteract that, I've turned up the luminosity. So now, if I do a before and after, see I've just brightened up those areas. So I've used the colour selector here just to select those areas. We can do something similar with the sky. So if I go to another HSL and turn this up here, well, first of all, let's select the sky. So I'll just take one of the blue ones, click on the picker, up here to the main colour in the sky, and turn this up. You can see the sky being turned up a bit there, and you can see, is it affecting anywhere else? It is affecting a bit down here, but actually this is only turning up rather late in this, because this could be the reflection from the sky, so you kind of want to keep that colour. So I'll turn that up a bit, and I'll just paint over that a bit later just to turn the effect down. I'm also going to nudge the colour a bit here. So I'm going to nudge that a little bit one way or the other. So one way I'm going to go more blue, the other way I'm going to go a bit more turquoise. And just make that a little bit on the turquoise side. So it's just nudged up a little bit. So it's 10 degrees there. Just I like that colour a bit more. So we've done the sky there. Has it affected this? Yeah, it has a bit. So let's paint on that. So I just take the black paintbrush there and paint a little bit on here just to do this down, and I'll change the opacity here. I'll just hit the number 4, it turns to 40% there, to just paint some of this off here, so it's got the natural colour in there anyway. So that just reduces that a little bit over there. So now I'm going to do something a little bit more interesting, which is I'm going to put some lighting in here, which you can do in pictures quite easily, and it's quite a useful effect on many pictures. So when I click on the lighting here, this is obviously not right, but one that's useful one here is go from spot to point, and this lights up the whole picture. I'm going to put it down here, which does seem rather odd, but you get this kind of very specular effect here. So I just turn that specular down, and that's Not going to happen there, but I want the whole thing to be lighter. It's made it darker, so I turn up the ambient. And that brings up the picture there until you get the effects happening in here. So again, I can go to the mask, the built-in mask there, click on the black there too, and do this. What's the opacity there? Let's turn that down a bit to somewhere in the middle there, and paint on the built-in brush just around here so that effect doesn't happen around the sun. We don't need to brighten up the sun. Here we go. And then with the lighting effect, again, we can play with this with other things. See what effects we can have here. What about the shininess? Does that make much effect? No, not much effect. Here, texture, probably don't need any texture added to it, but colour can be quite useful. So I'd click on that colour there, and I click on, say, something like red, and you get yourself an entire red colour to this. But you can always turn the opacity down on this. And why you take red is because the red is opposite to the cyan effect here. So if I just turn the opacity down on the whole thing, let's see what the effect is happening here. So it's, no, that's the opacities of this bump mat. It's the bottom one I want, isn't it? There we go. So there I can just add in a little bit of light there, red. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more orange by turning up the green there. When you've got a straight line between these three here, it's going to be more orange in the colour. So you can play around with the colour you like. Making it the complementary colour of the sky is a kind of cute trick to it. And I'm just going to finish this with a little bit more contrast in this picture. And just simply, for this, you could use curves, but I'll just use brightness and contrast for this. So I'll turn up the contrast a bit and bring up the brightness of the picture overall. So just there's a little bit more in it. There you go. And that's around about it, I think. So you can always do more with pictures. And that's it, and thank you very much for watching.